I'm AC Brown, and you're listening to Is My Aura on Straight, a podcast designed to help you start living from your core instead of your conditioning. Each week, we'll discuss topics ranging from human design, astrology, metaphysics, spiritual self-development, and everything in between. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Is My Aura on Straight. I am your host, AC Brown. I am your spiritual doula, intuitive strategist, and human design expert, and I'm also an entrepreneur. And today, I want to thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Is My Aura on Straight. In this episode, I'm going to round up the Not Self series, and we're going to be focusing on our reflectors, the disappointed souls. Oh, reflectors, you experience a lot of disappointment and anger, and we're going to talk about that today. And as I stated before in the other episodes for this series, is that we must address the not self, because the not self is where we need to decondition and heal the most. And it's important for us to address the not self because it's also usually the beginning points of people's human design experience when they first find it. So we're going to talk about reflectors today. So if you're not familiar with reflectors are the only 2% of the population, and their strategy is to mirror their communities, mirror their work, mirror where they live. They need, that's their purpose, but their strategy is to wait 28 days, a full moon cycle. That's not possible in this day and age, but I still tell reflectors to use it for the bigger invitations. But for the invitations that you need done quicker, you need to really have a tight circle of friends that you can look to as a cheat sheet to, get some feedback on the decisions that you need to make. But I digress. Let's talk about reflectors and why they are often the disappointed souls when it comes to their not self. Reflectors have the potential to reflect everything around them and to reflect everything or mirror everything pretty perfectly, because they need to focus on the right place to live and the right place to work. They become mirrors to the things around them, to the people, to society around them, to everything. But they're also subjected to possibly mirroring the wrong things as well. Since reflectors have all open centers, they have no definition in their centers, they are subjected to all energy. Now, that doesn't mean that reflectors are more emotional or more vulnerable because of that energy that they are constantly getting in. Reflectors are actually the most resilient out of all of the aura types. And that is because they are constantly receiving energy from so many places. Their head center, their ajna, their, G center, all the centers are open. So they are constantly receiving so many influences outside of themselves that their resilience has to be very strong. They have to have that endurance to keep going and keep things up because they cannot get sucked in to that. But however, a lot of reflectors do, and that's where the disappointment comes in, is because they, instead of them, and I'll talk a little bit about this later on in the podcast, but instead of them just mirroring something or a situation or a person or a community or where they're at and just being a mirror to it and not absorbing all of the traits and qualities, that's where they get messed up at, is because they can tend to lose themselves in the mirroring process. They can tend to lose themselves in that whole right place, right work. They're actually, it's funny because reflectors are actually the best employees. If you want someone who is like all about the company and have you ever worked at a company? And this is for, all the aura types, but there's this one person who is like annoyingly like the company mascot, like, if it's best for the company, if it is, right for the company, like, they're at the company barbecues, they're, at the company happy hour, they're like the model company employee. That's a reflector. So just think about them. It's yes, that can be annoying to, a projector like me who's like, I don't have the energy for all of this, or manifestors like, I'm not doing this. But reflectors they're great employees, because especially if they love working there, it is like your ideal employee because of that. And I always tell reflectors who want to own their own businesses that they have to learn how to be the model employee, as well as to not absorb the company's identity and make that a part of them, because they want to also build their own thing. And for reflectors, that's very challenging for them, because when they are in environments where they love being at and they love the energy and they thrive in it, then they make that their identity. Meanwhile, what they're really supposed to do is just, while they're in that environment, is mirror what they see, and then when they leave that environment, to make sure they know who they are. So that's where reflectors mostly become disappointed, because at times they'll get into these situations when it comes to jobs, relationships and things, where they don't like what they see in the mirror anymore, because they're like, well, shoot, who am I? Why don't I like this? And that's when they become disappointed. So all the open centers they actually have the deepest wisdom possible. And that's because those centers that they have, they keep the good things in those learning lessons. They keep the good parts. They keep the good energy from them. One thing that, because of their resilience, they are able to let go of the negativity when it comes to things. That's really great about reflectors. Now, because they magnify everything and everyone around them, they really miss the mark with getting the basics down. So job, place to live, that whole thing. And that's the same, what I mean by that with the basics, the mirroring part. They, instead of mirroring, like doing the same thing while you're in the environment, instead of absorbing all of it, that's where they become very disappointed, where their lives are like, oh, I hate living here, or I hate working here. That's what it'll become. Or I hate my boss. I see that a lot in reflectors who have not mastered the art of mirroring what they're doing. Reflectors not only make great employees, but they also make great leaders and mystics and spiritual guru kind of things, because if they can just tap into that mirror aspect of them and then allow who they really are to shine, it's a great combination. But they don't know how to do that. Most of them don't, because they get so caught up in finding the right work, finding the right place to live, that they never take the time to leave that leave the saying, like, that whole balance kind of thing, leaving your work at work, and then being yourself at home. Reflectors have a hard time doing that. Some reflectors who are very aligned and who are happy, they have no problem doing that, because a reflector's greatest gift is really to read others and read environments, not to absorb them, just to read the energy. Like I said in the Reflector podcast, that, if you want to see what's going on at a party, or bring a reflector with you if you can find one. Bring a reflector with you, and they can tell you, like, oh, okay, this is a cool environment, this is cool energy. Like if you're, I like to use reflectors as they can measure the temperature of situations. So like if you're throwing a party at a certain place, take a reflector with you, see how the energy is there. And they're like, oh, okay, this is a nice place. I like the energy. I like the mood. Then that's a good place for you to have a party. So reflectors can be that much of an asset to us. They are true mystics at heart. But like I said, reflectors never allow themselves to reach that level of freedom, because being a mystic, being that truth teller, is very challenging for them, because they get caught in these jobs or situations or environments where they are afraid to rock the boat, because it feels good to them. Imagine, searching for something somewhere and searching for something, and then you find it, and then you're like, wait, I don't want to jeopardize this feeling. I don't want to jeopardize this energy of me loving to work here, loving to be around these people. So they don't allow themselves to be the truth tellers that they are, to be the mystics that they are, because they don't want to rock the boat. And that is too much freedom, because what happens with reflectors, they do experience a lot of isolation because of this, because that energy that they do experience, because they're absorbing instead of mirroring, it makes them want to be alone or want to be by themselves because it's too much for them. So that's why it's also good for them, that whole 28-day decision-making process. It's my belief that the 28 days is not about waiting 28 days, but more managing the emotions of the moon cycle, because the connection that reflectors have to the moon is pretty magical, and reflectors actually experience with the moon cycle, they can experience ebbs and flows of other aura types as well. So 1 minute they can have during the moon cycle, and they have to really monitor this themselves. They can experience all of this energy, and they need to look at and see what the moon is when they experience all that generator energy, or who they're around. And then they can experience this like heightened intuition. They need to check the moon when it's like that. I know some reflectors who are extremely intuitive, during, the full moon, and who have a lot of energy during, other types of moon cycles. So that's why it's important for them to have a connection to the moon. The 28 days, sometime in this day and age, point blank period, it's not realistic. So reflectors get very disappointed when they hear the whole, I have to wait 28 days. I'm going to keep it 100. You can't wait 28 days. First of all, the generator and manifesting generator world around you and the manifestor world around you is not going to let you wait 28 days to do anything or make a decision about something. So that's why you have to have a very tight circle of friends who you can tap into for advice. That's why you have to really know yourself as well, so you can react a little bit quicker. Reflectors, since that disappointment of, being isolated, they feel isolated, since they do feel isolated because of that long waiting process, it doesn't allow them to cultivate proper council members, proper friendships where they can seek advice, where they can seek this guidance from the outside world. So the 28 days doesn't seem like a long time. That's where I'm going with that. So reflectors get things messed up, like I said, because they mirror people and environments, and they get lost in the sauce instead of mirroring for a purpose. The biggest thing that I can give as a takeaway for reflectors is when they're mirror processes, mirror the way people do stuff, mirror how people talk to people, mirror those things, and take that in, take the good of it, take what you want from it, and then make it a part of you. Don't mirror to be a robot, because that's when you start absorbing stuff, and then you're like, the company mascot, here's Sarah, at every event, at everything, and then Sarah gets laid off, and then her world is like shut down. She's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I was, I love that company. It was everything. And, that's because, Sarah absorbed instead of just mirrored that and saying, okay, well, since I was able to do it at this company, now I can take these skills and either do it for myself or take it somewhere else and get a better position. But most of the time, Sarah, because she's so used to mirroring, she'll just try and get that same position somewhere else, where she's at, because she's so comfortable being in that position. I hope that makes sense. I hope you guys are following me. Reflectors are also very prone to depression because they don't find the right place or the right place to live or the right work for them. A lot of reflectors in their 20s often go through that experience where they are so unsure of themselves. They fall into these isolation, depressive kind of modes because they don't have that foundation for themselves. So it's very imperative for reflectors to get that, but also, like I said, to not make that so much of their being that if that was to be taken away from them for any reason, due to personal reasons or just due to external resources, they won't completely be lost. So here are a few things that reflectors can do so you're not so disappointed. Be yourself. Hopefully at this stage in the game that you found human design, you know what yourself is and that you're not tied to something outside of you that you've been mirroring for a long time, whether it be work, your family environment, etc. Also, don't worry about having a fixed identity, because you're like I said, you're old soul too, like, projectors, but it's a little bit different from you. You're like, a flower child. That's what you should be, that going with the flow, being a mystic, just allowing life to just take you where it needs to take you. But having that foundation to allow you to do those things is really important for you to have a good work environment if you need to pay your bills and things like that, until those big things do happen for you. Also, you won't be invisible if you learn how to be yourself. The reflectors that I know, I love them. I love their energy. I love who they are, all of that stuff. But they, most of them know who they are. The others, sometimes they're trying to figure it out, but it's a nice process to watch them and see that. Another thing is, the key is to reflect your truth and not to reflect the pain of other people's energy. And that's that thing going back to mirroring. Mirror with a purpose. Take the good parts about it, the things that you find true about, that particular situation or environment that you're in, and reflect that out into the world. Don't take on the negative about that. And then you have all of this absorbing energy of the things that you don't need. Also, learn how to get to know yourself. A lot of reflectors, they feel like, I'm all over the place because I'm doing so many things. It's okay to have a period of that, of learning to get to know yourself, but know that, it's going to eventually lead you to a really great space. And also try not to isolate yourself. Like I said, in order for you to beat that 28-day waiting period for making decisions, you need to start cultivating better relationships with people, better, board of advisors, and letting them know how you work, letting them know what type of feedback you need. And don't isolate yourself when you get to those points where you have to wait or you need to wait for something to happen, because that's going to be very stressful for you when you isolate yourself. So just keep that in mind. So I hope this helped my reflectors. I know this is a little bit shorter than the other ones, but reflectors, just, keep in mind that because of all your openness, you really do, in a way, have an advantage. You can either be a chameleon, or you can, choose to be a clone. Now, being a clone is not bad, because you can, want to clone Oprah and just model her and, do everything that she did, take her path, take all of her ideologies, and then make that a part of yourself. Or you can be a chameleon and allow yourself to sample and taste from each of the people who you admire, who you like. When it comes to business, especially for reflectors, small business owners, reflectors really are allowed to, especially in their marketing efforts, what I'm going to talk about in my Pathway to Profits workshop that I'm going to be doing soon. Reflectors can really take advantage of the mirroring techniques, because they can literally, they're the perfect ones in a way to buy a course. If they brought a marketing course, they can do exactly what the marketing course says, and they can be successful because they're allowed to mirror. Their verbiage that they use can just mirror other they can mirror generators, they can mirror manifesting generators, they can mirror the reflector stance. They just need to mirror that. So that's why it's sort of like it's a gift and a curse. They can either be a chameleon or they can be a clone, but they have that option to do both. No path is, better or worse than the other, but they can do it. So, I love working with reflectors, because especially reflectors who are small business owners, because they do have a way of an advantage, and it's actually kind of cool when they're successful. So if you're a reflector, just keep that in mind. You can either be a chameleon or you can be a clone. Either way, you can thrive on either lane. So thank you so much, reflectors, for taking a listen. Also, if you want to know who you are in human design, definitely check out my offerings on the Work With Me section on my website. And what was I gonna say? Oh my gosh, see, I'm having drawing a blank. Thinking about other reflector tips marketing wise, but I'll have to save that for later. Follow me on Instagram. If you don't know your aura type, fill out the what's my aura type in my Instagram profile, and I can tell you what that is. If you are interested in being on an episode of Is My Aura On Straight, also go to my Instagram at AC Brown and click Aura Analysis. Like I've been saying before, it is a little bit of psychic intuition, a little bit of coaching, and a whole lot of clarity with one problem that you have. And we take a look at your chart and I help you fix that problem, because that's what I am great at. But until next time, I hope you have a great day filled with good vibes and great energy. Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Is My Aura On Straight. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at AC Brown, and also check out my website for products and services at www.acbrown.com. And until we meet again, make sure you have a great week filled with good vibes and good energy.